This happened in the summer of 2010, and to be honest, I'm still petrified about this experience. I'm a 15-year-old male now, but I was 9 when it happened. At that age, I was always frightened about murderers and bad people. I was taught about stranger danger by my parents and all that stuff. All the time, there was a huge rumor around my town in England about a crazy homeless man living in the woods at the side of the field at the local park. The park was set out like this. As soon as you walk in, there is a car park, a football pitch, and a playground for children. Behind this was a field that had a concrete footpath around it. There is a metal fence on the side of the footpath, so you could not go through the woods. This summer, somebody had bent a specific part of the fence around the bottom of the field. This meant that anyone could fit through and adventure through the woods. The rumor of the homeless man then began, and as a 9-year-old child, I was quite scared about going in. Lots of other children in my class at the time were talking about it. Some even had the guts to go in and made up what I thought were lies, saying that they saw the guy sitting there holding a knife. You know, that kind of BS. I and my best friend at the time, Kyle, were planning on entering there. In daylight, of course. It was a hot Saturday morning. The park was full of children and parents, so we thought if we desperately needed help, then we would run to them. We walked through the bent fence, and I must admit I was afraid at this point. Seeing the fence on the opposite side really got to me. As soon as we got in, you were met with a small mud hill, and once you got to the top, you could see the woods that went on for about a mile. I got to the top and saw logs lying there and trees standing there. It was so dirty. No wonder people call it the tramp's den. Kyle wanted to walk through, but I declined. It was just so scary for me. I told him that I would another time, just not now. He got into a Marty with me as we walked out. That week, the summer holidays started. People were still talking about the tramp's den, and it had become a popular attraction to children around my age. I made a stupid deal with Kyle. I told him that if he lets me borrow his Xbox controller for a night, then I will go further into the tramp's den with him, if he brings his older brother Matt. He was 15 at the time and I really liked him. He was brave and strong, and he played for our local rugby team for under 18 and was by far the largest. He accepted my offer. He really wanted to go further in there. He was a lot stronger and had a lot more courage than me. He still does actually, but we aren't close anymore. The day came. It was around 2 p.m. and I met with Kyle and Matt. We walked in and, pretty much crapping myself, went down the small mud hill. We walked for what felt like an eternity, and Matt said, "What the heck?" I paused, my heart racing. He pointed at a can of white paint that had been poured over a log. Next to it, a neat pile of little girls' clothes. We booked it out of there, and even Matt was nervous. I stayed at Kyle's for a bit and then went home. That night, my parents were going out, so my oldest cousin, Zach, 19 at the time, came to look after me for the night. My parents weren't going to be back until around 1 a.m., so we had an awesome night planned. He was into Xbox like I was, so I was glad I had someone to play with. When he came at around 10 p.m., I spoke to him about the tramp's den. He didn't know about the whole fuss, so I explained it the best I could, and he really wanted to go. I declined many times as it was dark outside, and after what I saw, you can understand how much I didn't want to go. Then he said, "I'll give you 20 pounds. I was stunned. 20 pounds is a lot to a 9-year-old child. I accepted the offer. And believe me when I say this, it was the biggest mistake I've ever made. We left the house at 11 p.m., locked the door, and started the 10-minute walk to the park. Zach is a big guy, so I kept thinking to myself, what's the worst that could happen? Zach could screw up an old creepy homeless guy either way, so I became less scared and a little bit excited and badass. We got to the park. It was very dark. No street lights, nothing. Zach had my dad's torch and shone it at the park. We walked down the field footpath and got closer and closer to our destination. He shone the torch at the bent fence. I looked inside and there was nothing but silence and darkness. It felt so empty and scary. Zach went in first and I followed. We both stood at the top of the mud hill and saw the mile of trees and broken logs. I whispered to him, telling him to shine the torch at the paint and clothes. He did, but the clothes were gone. However, the paint was still there. This sent chills down my spine. Couldn't believe I was doing this. I already wanted to go, but Just think about what I could do with that 20 pounds. We walked down the mud hill. I was clutching Zach. I was petrified. Kept my eyes closed. We got further and Zach said, "What? Look." I looked and saw the clothes had been organized in a large circle further in. I began to cry at this point and closed my eyes again. Zach whispered to me, "Don't worry, some stupid teens probably did it to scare people." I didn't believe that. And man, how right I must have been. We got further and further, but nothing was there. Till about 10 minutes in, and Zach gasped. I opened my eyes and saw a dirty mattress. It, of course, had no duvet or sheet on it. It looked so old and dirty, like it was from a tip. I knew at this point that this tramp did exist and it was no longer a rumor. I told Zach that we needed to leave, but he insisted that we walk just a little bit more. I could tell by his voice that he was a little bit afraid. That's what terrifies me. Then the scariest thing in my entire life happened. Zach actually screamed. He shone his light at a dirty homeless man standing at the side of a tree to our right. Not only that, but he was naked and holding a knife. I looked at the guy out of shock because I was so confused as to why he was screaming. We both didn't waste another second. We both booked it back up to the woods. Not even daring to look back. I was screaming, but Zach was just running and running. I was very scared. This guy could grab me. Zach was about 2 meters ahead of me now, and I was screaming and crying. We could see the mud hill and climbed up and shot out of the bent fence. Neither of us paused for a second. We just kept running up until we were at the car park. I grabbed Zach with tears and snot on my face. He grabbed my arm and shone the light and looked to the direction of the tramp's den. The guy was a small figure now, as he was at least 80 meters away. Sorry, I'm crap at yards and other measurements like that. He was still freaking running. Not that fast, but the fact that he was running after us from such a distance away scared us so much. Zach was now crying and screaming, "Run." We booked it all the way home and didn't stop. We unlocked the door, slammed it, locked it, and stayed up talking about it until 1 a.m. when my parents got back. I didn't tell my parents. The only person I told was Kyle, but he didn't believe me. When school started again, people were still talking about this den, and all I could think about to myself was how I went there at 11 p.m. Beat that, suckers. And yes, I did get the 20 pounds as soon as we got back, and I can't remember what I bought, but it was really not worth it. This was the scariest event that's ever taken place in my life, and possibly always will be. Despite all the regrets, I'm proud of myself for standing up to my fears. And this event has made me a lot stronger and less afraid. If I can do that, I can do anything. The metal fence was replaced with a new one just before Christmas that year. If you were wondering, this guy was never found, and I should have told the police but never did. As Zach told me not to tell anyone, as he was trusted by my parents to look after me. This story goes back many years ago after a breakup. A little time to myself, and I just wanted to meet new people. Not necessarily hook up, just dates. Here enters JB. Seems nice enough. Met at the nearest city. Had a nice day and I say goodbye. We make some more arrangements to hang out, and eventually we end up back at his flat in an area of the city I know quite well, as I lived there as a student. So I felt confident and comfortable, as his flatmates would also be home. I wouldn't be completely alone with him. We were sitting downstairs watching The American Office when his flatmates came home, and they were making their meals, and he suggested finishing watching an episode upstairs before I left for the bus. Well, he has the smallest room with a single bed and no chairs. He lies down on the bed and I sit on the end. He encourages me to move up, and I awkwardly do. He says he can't see, so lie down. So I lie down on the bed uncomfortably, but try to think logically, and we hadn't even kissed yet, so what could happen? I wish I had just left. Without even a cuddle or anything, this guy grabs my arm and tries to shove my hand down his shorts. Nope. Luckily, I was kind of clutching my hand back close-ish in the other hand, and I just flipped out of the bed into a standing position, threw my bag over me, and ran downstairs with him saying, "Sorry." He had no shoes on, and he didn't know I used to live in the city because I was out of there and down a different street that we had come down earlier. I was freaking out at the bus stop on the phone, trying to get a lift home before he finds me. I make it home and now I never saw him again. But that was not the last time I heard from him. He went mighty quiet after I ignored his messages begging to meet up with him. I spied on his Facebook when he did go quiet, just curious. And he had just moved in with a girlfriend. I mean, this was mere weeks after the event. Who moves in with someone that quick? Or was he already seeing her? I guess I'll never know. 6 months and nothing. I hadn't been on POF for a while after that, and then in January I get a message. It's him. He split with her and just wants to chat, meet, and have a coffee. Being a bit lonely and him having kind of an it was nothing attitude, I thought about it. I agreed and said, only if we meet in public. He agrees and we make plans, and on the evening I'm leaving work, he says he can't make it and I should just meet him at his place. Nope. I decline and go home. This goes on for a further 6 months with him badgering and guilting me into saying I'd meet with him at a coffee place and him changing the plans last minute to me canceling. This sounds like nothing until June when I had been messaging my friend M, a male who lived in the next town over. M had a psycho ex-girlfriend that he had told me all about, and M had a very normal name but spelled it very unusually to me anyway. So one evening I'm chilling at home and I get a WhatsApp from a number that I don't recognize, and it mentions M in the way his name is spelled. I obviously freaked and told M I thought his crazy ex. He didn't have a Facebook and moved away from his family as a partial reason to get away from her. Had messaged me. Unfortunately, I have forgotten what the threatening message was, just that I was freaked out enough to ask, "Who's this?" And I got a message. You know, M knows. So M freaks out and I keep getting calls from this number into the early hours and the caller keeps hanging up when I answer. I suffered from anxiety at the time and the next morning I was a wreck. I went to work and got another spate of random calls. Later that night I told my cousin everything and she called from her phone. Guess whose voicemail she got? Yes, JB. She leaves a message saying not to contact me again and that the police will be involved. I check his Facebook later and he's moving back to his home country. I hopefully will never meet him again. Probably not the most scary or creepy encounter, but it was playing on my mind recently. This happened in 2007 when I was 19. It was summer break and I didn't have to work, so I used my day off to go to a park, climb a tree and read a book. Nobody else was in the park that day. Mine was the only car in the parking lot. It was a beautiful day, so I remember being a little bit surprised at that, but it was also mid-morning on a weekday, so I figured that was why I had the place to myself. I'd been there about an hour when I heard a car pull in. This park is on top of a steep hill overlooking a valley, and the entrance is kind of strange. You can't exit where you entered. Once you enter the park, you are immediately in the sole parking lot. There's an exit on the far end of the parking lot that circles the entire park and dumps you onto the main road. From where I was sitting and from most angles, the parking lot curves and a majority of it, including the exit, is hidden around a bend and a bunch of trees. You can only see a small portion of the lot. I heard somebody enter, but I didn't look up in time to see the car before it disappeared around the bend. A moment later, movement caught my eye. A man walked into the park. He was older but not elderly, late 50s, early 60s. I did the same smile wave thing that you do with strangers. He ignored me, which is usually no problem. After all, nobody owes me their time. I was a little bit weirded out, however, because although he didn't acknowledge me, he walked right toward me. I thought, maybe he needs directions. Maybe he's actually heading past me to go look at the view of the valley, which you cannot see at all from a tree. But no. Without saying a word or looking me in the eye, he walked to the tree and sat down directly beneath me. It sounds silly, I'm sure, but there was something about his presence that really got to me. It wasn't the silence. I can sit in silence no problem. I prefer it actually. It was just him. He was completely motionless. No coughing or fidgeting. Nothing at all. He stared at the small section of the parking lot and the porta potties. He could have sat anywhere in the entire empty park, but chose to sit directly beneath the girl he was ignoring, so he could sit and silently stare at the parking lot. Why come to a beautiful park with great views and nature trails if you're just going to look at the parking lot? I don't know why, but my intuition had me on high alert. I told myself that I wasn't getting down until he left. If he tried to come up after me, I thought I'd win. I could stomp on his hands, push him, or whatever. But if I came down, I was vulnerable. He could grab my legs. It was too high to jump down without risking injury. Best to stay put. The thing was, I kind of expected him to move after a while. But no, he sat beneath me for more than a half hour, without so much as fidgeting. The whole time I kept saying to myself, "You're being paranoid. He's just an older dude at a park. Maybe he just likes this tree." But I still didn't get down. At that point though, I was also kind of over being stuck in the tree, so I decided to smoke him out. I texted a friend and said there was a strange man near me and asked if she would give me a call. I figured if he's just a benign old man looking for some peace and quiet, then my being loud will encourage him to seek it in literally any other section of this very large, very empty park. If he's trying to murder me, maybe he'll realize I have a cell phone, as not everybody did in 2007, and just leave me alone. At the very least, I thought that if I waited long enough, somebody else might come into the park and see me. My friends called and asked me if I was okay, and I tried to seem nonchalant and breezy. She kept checking in throughout the call. Is he still there? How about now? He didn't move a muscle. Didn't acknowledge that I was being pretty rude. Just kept staring out at the parking lot. I was still telling myself that I was being paranoid. My friend, thankfully, had the time to stay on the phone with me. We talked for another 40 minutes, and then he just stood up and left. I watched him disappear around the bend in the parking lot. As soon as he was out of earshot, I told my friend he had left, and we laughed at my paranoia. Yeah, she teased. Some creepy old man in the park scared you by sitting. I felt so silly acting like I had. At that point, our fake conversation had turned into a real one though, so we stayed on the phone. I hadn't seen her in a couple of months, since college had let out for the summer, so we had a lot to catch up on, outside of the awkwardly fake small talk that we'd make for the past 40 minutes. I was in that tree for another 30 minutes and stayed on the line as I hopped down. I gathered up my stuff and walked to the parking lot. I turned the bend and stopped. Nobody else had come into the park, but my car wasn't alone. Parked opposite, it was a black, windowless 16-passenger van, and in the driver's seat, the older man. I felt frozen. I said to my friend, "He's been waiting in the parking lot this whole time," and she yelled, "What are you waiting for? Get in your car." That got me moving. I ran to my car as fast as I could, locked my doors, and watched him in my rearview mirror. I started my car. He started his van. I reversed out of my spot, and he reversed out of his. I drove like crazy on that one-lane road out of the park, despite the speed limit being 15 because of all the wildlife. I'm still thankful I didn't hit a deer or anything. He kept up, but I lost him on a bend and made it to the main road. I watched my mirrors the whole way home in case he was still following me. I looked over my shoulder for weeks afterward, worried that he had my license plate number. Basically, I think I got away from my would-be kidnapper by being patient and annoying. Always trust your intuition. These are one of those stories where you don't even know where to begin, so let's start with when I first met Bryson. As teens, my friends and I went to a lot of shows. I'd say most of the people I still know today are people that I met at some hardcore show or at some dirty venue. Being a 110-pound girl at the edge of a pit with too many beers in her, I sometimes got bumped into, but it didn't bother me too much. So one night, this absolute beast of a man comes and stands in front of me and fends off all the drunk punks and makes sure that nobody bumps into me or my best friend Joyce. How sweet of him. So the months turn into years, and we all grow up a bit and start going to fewer and fewer shows. I was at my tattoo artist when I bumped into Bryson in the waiting section. We catch up a little bit. Find out that he works close to where I live. We have a massive chat. He talks about Joyce and asks if we are still inseparable and if she still works at the same place. He's very sincere and kind, and he's well known in our scene, so when he asked for my number, I didn't have an issue giving it to him. After that, we were texting often, but not often to make it a thing. Every time I die was on tour in my country a few weeks later, and it was during the rainy season of the year. Joyce and I obviously had the time of our lives. Bryson was there and we had shots with him. If I'm going to tell you how I lost one of my shoes in the mud, I'd be lying because I honestly have no idea how it happened. I just woke up minus one sneaker and didn't think too much of it. They were old anyways. This is where things started getting weird. I'm at my part-time job when one of the guys from the Vans store rocks up to my shop. He has 2 pairs of Vans, in my size, and tells me to pick one. I tried to explain to him that I don't have money for shoes right now, but thanks. He then says, "Don't worry, the guy with the tattoos paid for them already. You can have either one of these pairs." The guy with tattoos? That could be anyone, I thought. The only tattooed guy I could think of that would buy me sneakers is probably my ex. But he lives in a different country now, so it's virtually impossible. I asked the Vans employee if he had a name for me, but he says no. So I pick a pair and decide that I'll try and figure out who got them for me when I'm on my break. Just as I'm about to finish my work, Bryson meets me at my shop. "The guy with tattoos?" I ask him, and he says it was him that bought the shoes. I say thanks and offer to repay him, but he says he would just like to take me for dinner. I politely decline, so he offers to give me a ride home. Weeks and months passed, with a random text from Bryson here and there. Nothing much. I got a boyfriend and we broke up a year later. I moved out of town and back again. By now, I'm an adult woman. I run into Bryson at a show and we have a massive catch-up. He seems happy and he's doing well in life. He asks if I still have the same number, and he asks Joyce and if I were still inseparable. I say yes to all of his questions. At this stage, I'm working at a shop in a strip mall. As per what I guess has become a little tradition, a package from Vans arrives at my shop. They are addressed to me. My size. Not really my style. I message Bryson and he says it's a gift, and he'd still like that dinner. Again, I offer to repay him. Kindly decline the dinner date. A week or so passes and he arrives at my shop with 2 bags full of Lush goodies and lunch for my colleague and me. He says he's been in the area and he felt like doing something nice for me. I felt overwhelmed and said there was no way I can accept this. He insists. He says how the sales lady at Lush said that she wishes she had a guy to buy her nice stuff. I offer to repay him again. Still, just wants dinner. I say to him that I don't want to do that because I feel like I'd be wasting his time and leading him on. He said that he would never think that I was BSing him because he loves me. Loves me? Okay. That escalated fast. I was without words. When he left, I sent him a text asking him to never buy me gifts again, and he didn't reply. Fast forward about a month, I'm having a housewarming and Halloween party at my apartment. I'm dressed as Mia Wallace and Joyce is Beetlejuice, and we are busy getting ready. I already have a dozen friends downstairs having fun and being social. Suddenly, another friend of mine hammers on my bedroom door. Freaked the heck out. There's a guy with a gun downstairs asking for you. What? Guy with a gun? One of my guests. As I'm trying to figure out what's going on, my housemate bolts upstairs, pushes me into my room, and closes me inside. Bryson is here, dude. He has a gun. Joyce is hyperventilating. I gave him your address. He said you invited him to your party, but you never sent him the link to your place. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'm freaking out and screaming at my friends to just call the police. Eventually, my friend managed to talk him into putting his gun away, saying that if he doesn't, we'll call the police. And he doesn't want Bryson to get in trouble. I watched my friend lead Bryson outside back to his car. My last memory of Bryson is him crying loudly, pacing up and down in front of my apartment block, repeatedly hitting things while he's walking. I've blocked him from any way of possibly contacting me, and I haven't bumped into him since. I'm not sure if he's in town anymore. Apparently, he found a job about 3 hours from here. I ended up moving somewhere else, but I still work at the same place. I hope he's figured out that you can't buy someone's affection, nor scare it into them. So I live in the Pacific Northwest, which has a great number of excellent campsites. A favorite of mine isn't actually a designated campsite, but a forest road right on a river. Being a moody young woman, I would frequently make sojourns in my dumpy Toyota Camry, to this one spot so I could be more alone on the river and meditate on whatever was bothering me. Camping alone as a 20-something female often inspired anxiety in both me and my folks, but I didn't let that deter me. Camping alone was something I genuinely enjoyed doing, and after experiencing a series of emotional misfortunes, I needed the time to myself. The last time I ever went to this particular spot, I must have been about 21. I had just had a closure conversation with somebody who broke my heart some months prior and wanted to take some time to process this. Luckily enough, I had gotten consecutive days off from my retail job, so I packed up my car and made the 3-hour drive to the spot. This spot is fairly well known, and often a few other campers would be there on weekends, but during the week, it would more than likely be empty. By the time I arrived, it was late afternoon, and I was slightly disappointed to discover a turquoise Chevrolet truck and another silver car parked closest to the river. I parked some distance behind them and began unloading my things. 2 young gentlemen were hanging out by the truck, and as I passed by, they greeted me. I muttered a hello and kept walking. I picked a spot I thought was nice and went back to get the rest of my things. As I was passing their cars again, one of the men, the shorter, stockier one, rushed to a boulder near the path where some pistols, I later learned that they were air pistols, were sitting and quickly concealed them, saying, "Oh, sorry about that. Didn't mean to scare you." There was something childlike in his manner, like he did this specifically so I would pay attention to him. I told him it was fine. I wasn't scared and kept walking. I unloaded the rest of my things, set up my camp, and got a fire going. I was kind of tired after the long day of driving and hauling my stuff around, so I plopped down in a camp chair and got some chili mac cooking for dinner. It was a beautiful evening, not too hot, and golden hour on the river is always a fantastic thing, so I was thoroughly enjoying the moment. I could see the 2 men swimming up a river a bit, but it was easy enough to ignore them. By the time I finished eating, they passed by my camp on the opposite bank and were walking into the woods. I went down to the bank to get water for my dishes and heard the stockier one call out to me. "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that I'm a good guy, okay?" Maybe this should have alarmed me more, but it didn't. I definitely thought the guy was socially inept, but left my judgments at that and elected to answer with a polite, "Okay." I wanted him to leave me alone and thought that if I was nice but uninterested, he'd take the hint. This was a demonstrably ineffective approach. Some time had passed and I had been musing over the last week's events and just generally enjoying the beauty around me when he came limping up to my camp. He was doing a faint grunt as if he were in pain. I don't exactly remember the exchange we had, but he wound up sitting at my camp and explaining to me that he had some injuries in the past that were adversely impacted by the cold of the river. Before I go any further, I'll preface this by saying I was pretty passive as a younger person, especially with strangers. I've definitely had to practice setting and maintaining boundaries as I've gotten older, and this instance demonstrates the danger of failing to do so. I kick myself every time I tell this story. I'm not sure if immediately telling the guy to piss off would have made him leave me alone, being a young pretty girl alone in the woods, but I regret not speaking my mind more clearly that day. All that said, given some previous experiences, I had taken on a policy of engaging in active listening with others who seemed to be struggling. I obviously was faced with my own woes and wanted to be treated compassionately, so I aimed to do the same with others. It was clear that the guy was having issues and, by all exterior judgments, seemed like he was down on his luck, even with some maladaptive tendencies. He continued to stay at my camp and began telling me all about his life. These stories were pretty fantastical, the kind of lies a child would tell you of some incredible adventure or grandeur. As they went on, they went into weirder and weirder territory. He explained that the aforementioned injuries that were paining him were the result of falling a great distance. He explained that the aforementioned injuries that were paining him were the result of falling a great distance while on a welding job, where his hand was caught by being impaled by a piece of rebar. He described his heroic effort of self-preservation by unhooking himself from the rebar and falling the rest of the distance, breaking his legs or something like that. I just gave him a series of, yeah, uh-huh, and oh wows. That must have been painful. He revealed that he was recently homeless after splitting up with his girlfriend who had been talking to another guy. That's why he was staying here in his truck, the aforementioned Chevy. He also told me that he DJ'd at a joint in the closest town and made a lot of money doing it. He increased his exaggerations by telling me he was also a 5-star chef and enlightened me on a gross-sounding dish of his own creation that was essentially a soup made from watered-down fruit jelly and some other sweet things. He also told me that he had once been a Navy SEAL, specializing in small arms. It was then he revealed to me that the pistols he thought scared me before were air pistols, and he augmented his tale of being in special forces by demonstrating some twirls with one of them and showing me what ultimately turned out to be some mediocre marksmanship. At a later point, he wound up giving me one of them because it made him think of doing bad things, he said. I hesitantly accepted it. I was pretty sketched out by this point and wanted the dude to leave, but lacked the backbone to tell him to go away. Unfortunately, as the evening wore on, he just continued to get weirder and weirder. By this point, he began bringing his belongings from his truck and setting them around my camp. This was a process that happened gradually, each new conversation note eliciting a new show and tell idea. I can't remember all he brought down, but it included his guitar and a lot of other stuff. He tried to give me some of it, but after the air pistol, I declined. The conversation dragged on, eventually with him telling me in detail about some childhood traumas. His father, who had been in the military, was very strict and often beat him. He also told me about his cousin, who had sexually abused him severely enough to leave scars in certain areas, which he described to me in great detail. He got really close to me when he told me this, looking me square in the eye unblinking. And that's why I'd never hurt you, he said, still staring at me. I kid you not, my skin started to crawl. I had a few things to defend myself with, a hunting knife and some bear spray, but he hadn't done anything directly threatening yet. Not long after this, his ex-girlfriend showed up. He introduced me as his friend, and they talked a little bit before he kind of ignored her in favor of me. The whole thing made me even more uncomfortable. She didn't stay long and sped away in her truck. I'm assuming in some fit of jealousy. What did I do to deserve that? I didn't say anything other than I was going to bed, hoping that he would take the hint and leave. He said he needed some alone time himself, and I thought I had lucked out. I went into my tent to bed for the night, as it had gotten dark, only to discover that a cheap ring had been left on my pillow. He must have placed it there when I stepped away to go to the bathroom. Furthermore, I could hear him still wandering around my campsite. I peeked out of my tent, and he had his head in his hands as he paced and was muttering to himself. A powerful feeling of needing to flee came over me. There was no way I could stay there. Even if he didn't do anything to hurt me, he at minimum would annoy me the whole 3 days I planned to stay. I quickly started packing my stuff, and when he asked what I was doing, I told him I was going to go. Since I was car camping, I had a bit of stuff with me that would require a few trips, and I hurried to get it all in my car. On one trip up the path to the parking area, he stood in the middle of it, complaining that my flashlight was blinding him. I didn't say anything and stepped around him. I left most of my trips after that unbothered, though I went with one free arm so I could carry my hunting knife and be ready in case he tried to get physical with me. On my second to last trip down, he came out of the dark from the direction of his truck. He was crying. But I didn't do anything wrong, he said. I flat out ignored him and ventured down the path once more to grab what I could and hightail it to my car. I wound up leaving a cord of wood behind, not seeing it worth the danger to go back for it. I shut all my doors and hopped in, absolutely elated at the sound of my 30-year-old car starting right up. I got the heck out of there and drove the 3 hours back to my house. I didn't have reception until about halfway through the drive, during which point I called my mom and told her what happened. She was upset that I didn't tell her where I was going. I told my dad and stepmom, whom I lived with at the time, and she was glad I was okay. When I got back, my stepmother asked what I was doing back, and I explained what happened all over again. My dad later suggested I get a gun if I wanted to continue solo camping, in case something like that happened again. The next day, I went out to my car so I could drive to meet some friends, and found my tire had gone flat. What an immense stroke of luck it was that it didn't happen at the campsite, or somewhere else in the mountains where I didn't have reception. I'm in my mid-20s now, and moved to this city about 6 months ago. My roommate and best friend discovered the air pistol while he was helping me move. He knew I didn't own any guns and was immediately confused, thinking it was real. When he asked about it, I laughed and explained what happened. I haven't been back to that site since, and while I definitely bring a friend there, I probably won't go alone again.